Well, welcome to Qdabra's weekly webinar. This is Patrick, and thank you all so much for joining us this morning. I have Mel Clemente with me, who's going to be discussing the new technique in a moment. But first, I want to welcome you and talk a little bit about what we're going to demo today. We're talking about PDF features that we've added recently. So the demo today is about new PDF features in Forms Viewer. We have had PDF printing in Forms Viewer for several years. So in addition to all the other commands that you have known and loved with Forms Viewer, we can actually do PDF printing. Last week we demonstrated doing differences between rich text fields, and we've got a lot of new demos coming this summer, including SharePoint admin demos. We're going to talk about Logic Apps versus Flow, because Microsoft just announced last week that they're changing the pricing model for Microsoft Flow. They're going to be charging per user now and per process versus usage, but there's still an option to use Logic Apps, which we're going to talk about next week with Svetlana, one of our new hires here. But today we're talking about PDF printing, and hopefully you can all hear me. We are why do we want to print PDF? Well, there's really three main reasons. One is to create a copy of record. You can also want to print a PDF to send it to somebody who doesn't have access to your network or to view offline. And finally, for signing. If you want to sign a document, we did a webinar back in November 2017, which we will probably do again soon, probably in September, showing DocuSign integration for Forms Viewer forms. And we're actually becoming more interested in this lately with one of our customers, and we'll be talking more about that later. So today we're actually giving you new support for headers and footers. This is in test, and we won't probably publish it out for another week or so, but we've had a lot of requests over the years. Well, why can't we do pagination with page numbers in the footer? And we finally decided that we were just going to do it. Up until now, you could do a page number in the top of the page. You have to add a page break, and there's some techniques I'll talk about in a second. But the reason why you want to have headers and footers is mainly to provide your company branding, the reference to the document, and perhaps some post-printout navigation. So obviously there's a navigation within the printout, which is the page number, but then you might, for posterity, want to have a QR code or something in the form that you can then use to look up the actual online copy later. So those are reasons why what we would like to add to the header and the footer. When you're doing PDF printing, there are a number of challenges. One is that, well, if you're doing printing of a form, the sections are pretty easy. You just add a page break statically in the form, and that's easy to do. You can insert a page break, and it will automatically, then when it prints out, break after that section. Repeating sections are more difficult because you have to count where you're at, and you have to be smart about conditionally adding page breaks. So that can be a challenge, but we have done that before many times. If you have a repeating section or table within another repeating section, that's impossible because of the dimensionality of it. It's three-dimensional versus two. You can't control both dimensions to figure out where to do the page break because the dimensions typically have different row heights, and it's just too complex. I mean, I suppose someone could do it. It's not mathematically impossible, but for all intents and purposes, it's not something that we can do today. Images, right now, images need to be printed on separate pages, but we do hope to have the image support for the headers and the footers at a future release. So you can put your logo in and other things like QR codes and so on. And then, of course, attachments. We can't print what's in the attachment, but we can actually show that there was an attachment. What we'll see today is we'll see images printing in the demo, but we won't actually be able to go into the attachment. The attachment could be in any file format, so it's impossible to launch Excel or launch whatever it is, a Word document, and print while you're in the form. And that's why that's not doable. Although we've had that request many times. You could write custom code to do it, but you'd have to cycle through all the different applications. And then, of course, there's a difference with page sizes. So in Japan, they use a different page size than in America. And the printing device knows that, but the form doesn't. So it's hard to do different pagination depending on different page size. This is true in Europe as well. So these are the typical issues. So we're going to do a quick demo now, and then we'll come back and talk about what we did and show how we did it. And Mel, if you're hearing me, I'm going to actually switch to you twice. I'm going to do the demo, switch to you so you can show them how to do it, and then we'll come back and we'll do the second demo in a list form, and then we'll switch back to you again. So I just changed our sequence a little bit. Hopefully that's not a problem.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool. I'm glad you're here. So let me just add one more item here. It's really important for this demo today that we have actually 2 items. And so we're going to take the limo to the airport. And I think it's called Pacific Northwest Limousines. Of course, in a year, it'll all be a robo-taxi, right? After Tesla puts everything, they're going to switch the driving model for all their cars to be robo mode, and so your car will be earning you money while you're working. And that's because they've had cars collecting data in shadow mode, 1 million cars forever and a day now. So let's just say that's $100. Okay, so this is our form. For those of you who haven't seen our expense report demo form before, this form has a number of kind of cool features. What you just saw was automatically adding a row. That's using the qRules insert command. I just want 2 rows for this demo. I want more than 1, but I don't want, I just want 2 here. So I'm going to hit submit, and when I do that, it's going to generate a PDF. It's going to ask me if I want to downsize my images, but they're both pretty small. So that overlay technique is something that we've demoed in the past. If you're interested in adding that to your forms where it does a pop-up that looks really nice, it's pretty easy to do. We did training in January, and we showed that technique as well as several others. And we're going to be doing training again in 2 weeks. So we'll be sending out an email tomorrow with registration information. And we're going to cap the class at 10 people, I believe. So we've already got a couple people registered. So if you're interested in free training, we've got free training. So what we see here is we just generated the PDF. So the form on load, on submit, the form is generating the PDF, and you can see it's 3 pages. So let's take a look at the PDF. So the one thing that we're interested in is the footer. So what you can see here is we now have, if I scroll down, we now have this footer here. It says title of the document, the purpose of the expense, my name, and the date, and page 1 of 3. So that's the footer. That's the really new command that we just added, and you can see that it's pretty simple at this stage. In the future, we'll have different formatting, so you can have italics and bold, and we'll have images. But for the first version of this, we're keeping it simple, and let's just take a look at the second page here. So the second page has the image, it has all the items listed for the copy. That's the copy receipt. That's the image of that, and it's got the right footer on that as well. Great job, Mel. And then for the third image, the third page, it's showing I got the price wrong for the limo fee, but whatever. And you can see there at the bottom, page 3 of 3. And if I go back to the form, you'll see it has finished submitting, and it'll take me back to the library now. And I also got an SMS text message saying I got a new expense report to approve, which you might have heard in the background there, a little ping from my computer. So we've done this demo many times before, but what's interesting is that new footer we're adding. And what I'd like to do quickly is switch to Mel and have her show us how she did that. And I'll just walk through that. Basically, I think it's these 4 steps, Mel, or these 3 steps, but what you tell us, I'm going to make you presenter here. And if anyone has any questions on this while she's walking through what she did, please don't hesitate to throw those questions out there. Mel, you are now the presenter.
Thanks, Patrick. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, here is the expense report form in the InfoPath Designer. And what you saw Patrick did was click on the submit button there. So we're going to look at what that does. So we show the overlay section if it detected the some big images, right? And you saw that. So then we try to pre-submit, and we've got a centralized logic technique here. So we're going to that node in the form logic data source and look at the rules here. This is what we're interested in, the render form as PDF rule, where we're calling the render form command and passing in the new parameters. Did I open the right form? This doesn't look like updated. Give me 1 second. That was an older version. Yeah. So let me get you the latest one.
While you're doing that, Mel, we are working very hard this year to finish we're redoubling our efforts to finish the designer for Forms Viewer in the browser, so we don't have to use the designer. It's going to look very similar to the InfoPath designer. We're trying to make sure people have continuity in terms of what they're expecting in the UI. So what we have right now in test is we have a Forms Viewer designer that looks very similar, but it's in the browser. So obviously you're not going to be able to change the width of panes and things like that as easily. But you will see the canvas on the left in the new Forms Viewer designer. The fields, rules will be down below. We have a kind of a little bit of an improvement on rule debugging we'll talk about probably in a future webinar. So Mel, you ready? Yep.
Yeah, thanks. So yep, we're simply setting the command, the qRules command node to call the render form command and rebuild our syntax. And let me show you the Forms Viewer Designer that Patrick was talking about, Forms Designer page. And here is, you can select your commands here. You can use this. This is actually really useful, and I've been using it a lot because I can't memorize all these parameters, right, with the growing list of our qRules commands. So we're going to look at the render form command, and here we can see that its short description generates a PDF, and we can even specify if we want to use a separate template or another template for printing, but we're going to talk about that more later. So here are our parameters. If you hover over these, and you see what those parameters are for. So very helpful. Go ahead and use this if you guys have Forms Viewer. So these are the new items that are like responsible for the footer, for the header and footer stuff. We can actually specify our font family, what size. Your header text can be dynamic. If you have, you can display the values of form fields in your, form, and or just static. And yeah, there you go. So let's look at their command again in the form here, the expense report form. So we say our format is PDF and specify which view we want to use as the print view, because normally your form that's the editable view won't look exactly like how you want your PDF to look like, right? So you usually create a separate view just for printing, a printer-friendly one. Then we output it as base64 type, and here goes our footer text, some static text there, separated by a pipeline there, and here's our purpose. So whatever the value of the purpose field is, the name, who the expense report is for, date today, and this is very cool this is like a game changer here. We can specify which page, the current page, and the number of pages there are total. So behind the scenes, qRules and Forms Viewer do that for us now. And then some alignment there, and whatever you want to call or name your PDF file with. And that's basically it. That's all that's responsible for getting you that printed PDF with the footer or the header.
It's just one command and just a few extra parameters. That's it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's right.
Okay. You just have to remember what those special codes are, CRT page and page count, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to switch back and we're going to do demo number 2. See if we can do this correctly here. I'm trying to switch back. I guess I might have to make myself presenter. 1 second. Okay, Mel, can you see the right slide screen?
That's right. Demo 1.
Great.
Slide.
Okay, so that was demo 1. So for demo 2, we're going to talk about list forms, and I'm really happy that Joe, you're on the call today because this was inspired by your stuff. And if I go back to my library here, so we have a site for the demos, site content. So in addition, I just want to show you a couple more things here. In addition to the library, we have attachments. And I think if I go to, here's the attachments. So you can see that about a minute ago, this folder was created. And this folder also contains the PDF. So in addition to generating the PDF, we're saving it to a folder along with the images for the receipts. This is something that's not new. This has been a product, been in Forms here for many years. In fact, it's something that Power Apps still does not have, which is shocking. You can't, attach an image and upload it to a library within a Power App. You have to use custom code and some flow to do that. But you can see here that the same PDF that we generated in the browser was also saved to this library for archiving purposes with the page number there at the bottom. It's kind of hard to see it, I guess, because it's so small, but you can see that along with the receipts at the end. That's kind of a weird image there. Okay, I'm not sure what SharePoint's doing. Mel, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just gonna, anyway, it is saved and it should be correct. I'll take a look at it again later. The form also submits the data to two lists. So it's got the list logic in it that submits repeating data to a child list, and then for the parent, it has the actual form, the main data, the fact that the expense was $168 and so forth. So I'm going to open this up here, and we'll show you the second technique. And this technique, it allows you to print repeating data from a list using a separate form to define the printout, the PDF. And that's important because the list forms, by their very nature, they can't actually print more than one item. And so here what we see is it's pulling in all the child items. And if I click print, it's going to give me a PDF that has those child items in it. It looks a little bit different. It should look different from the previous PDF. Maybe it does not. You can see it's printing everything out. And we have, actually we're using, I guess, the same one as before, but of course we don't have the images in the list form, so those aren't printing. But you can see it is printing the page numbers. So the images are printed from the previous form before we upload the images and convert them into links. And therefore they're in the form and they print correctly. If you want to print an image, you have to make sure that you print it before you upload the image and convert it into a link, because printing the link, as you can see here, won't show the image, right? Because there's no way for the PDF generation on the server to access that link. It has to be in the actual XML. So that's why you don't see the images in this one. But what I really wanted to show was the fact that we can print multiple items, and it makes it look good. So in this case, when we're printing the actual expense items from the list, you may want to have the images for the receipts, but the key feature add here is that we're able to actually print list data in a repeating way from a list form. And that was something that was added to 4.1, so that's actually in production today. Everyone has it if you've got Forms here, so you can actually print your list forms. I'd like to have Mel talk about how she does this, because it is a very clever technique. Mel?
Yeah. Okay, if you can make me the presenter again, please. Okay. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now. So here we've got a list form, and you can tell by the fields task pane here, it just has the list columns there as fields. So when I switch to show advanced view, it's gonna show us the normal way, the tree here, schema tree. So these are all our fields, and this is coming from the expense report parent list. So as expected, you won't have the child list data source in the main data source, so that's why you're not able to print it as is, right? So here is that expense items coming from the expense report items list, the child list, right? And it is added as a secondary data source. So what I'm doing when since I customized this list form, right? On form open, if we look at the Qdabra rules finished loading here, I query the related items for the opened expense list item, okay? So that's what we're seeing down there, but normally it won't be there. You're in the non-customized list form. So even if it's there as a secondary data source, again, it won't appear in the PDF unless you do some magic there. And that's exactly what we're doing here in the print button. So first we query the form that got submitted, that generated that list, the list data, right? So we added that in the data connection as the XML file, right, from the Qdabra expense report form, added that as an XML data connection there, and now we try to change the connection URL to actually query that form in the library right here. So change connection URL, specify my data source name, it's the XML one, and which URL. So we just pass those parameters in, and then we query the data connection. So what that does is this expense report XML data source is replaced with the actual form data right from this list form, if that makes sense. Okay, so now
that's actually pretty cool, right, Mel? Because that's simpler than query. You could query the child list, but then you'd have to transform the data after you queried it. And in this case, you're querying the XML parent, so you actually have all the data already there, and you can just print from the XML data source, right?
That's true, yeah. So yeah, that's where the second rule comes into play. So the difference in our library form versus this list form is we are specifying the template name. Let me show you where that is. Right here. It's a template name. So what this does is it's using a different template, not this template that I have because it's a list form template, right? To use as the printing template. And then I just say which view in that form do I want to use or show in the PDF.
Does the template have to be in the form template for the list form, or where is it? Is it just something in Forms Viewer?
Yeah, it's the same. It's just where it's just in Forms Viewer where the list form and the form, library form.
It could be any of these. We don't have to add it to the actual template of the list form, right? It just can be any of the ones to manage templates, right?
That's true, yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, we're using this one to print. The print view in this form is what's being used to output that PDF. And all the rest are the same. We're passing in the footer text there with the purpose and the resource name and all that. And I think that's it.
Very cool. The first time we've actually demoed this feature that we added for you, Joe. And this was actually done quite a while ago. Hopefully you can see my screen again, Mel. Let me know when you can see that come in here. I want to just switch back to the slide deck and talk about that technique. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, I can see now your browser.
So, and hopefully the slide as well, right?
No, the slide.
Cool. Yeah, so she's loading that secondary data in, but she's actually querying the XML to get the template XML from the parent to use in the printout, and she's not having to do step 4 here because of that sort of shortcut that we mentioned about using the XML from the parent library. So it's even faster than these steps here. But in general, if you don't have that shortcut, if you're just using list form data, you would have to copy the data into a main data source The main data source is easy. You could do a secondary data source that's repeating as well, but you do need a data source that has multiple data in it. So I guess it can't be the main data source. It has to be a secondary data source. So you would add that XML as a resource file, just as another data connection, and then you would copy the list data into that repeating structure so you can print it out correctly. I think I got that right, Mel. What do you think?
Yeah, that's right.
Makes sense. Okay. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. Any questions? And I also want to thank Mel. This webinar would not have happened without her wonderful efforts. She's been instrumental in so many of these new features. She's really our top forms designer. Way to go, Mel. So just waiting for questions for you. If you are still here, please ask us something or say something to, did this make sense? Did you like what you saw? The forms viewer the value prop for forms viewer there's 3 value props. One is that it is the lowest cost way to move your forms off of InfoPath. Not only is it the lowest cost way to migrate your forms off of InfoPath because it takes the InfoPath format as is, but it's also the lowest cost maintenance. And with Power Apps pricing now and these other techniques that Microsoft is unveiling, it's cheaper to maintain it with Forms Viewer because we are tenant-based. We don't charge with the license for usage. If you're online, is per tenant. If you're on-prem, we have a flat fee for the whole year. So it's much less expensive than Microsoft's features, and it always will be because we're a small business, and that's how we earn your trust, is by building solutions that are very cost-effective and very feature-rich. And that's the second main feature with Forms Viewer. The second value is the features. So we've added a ton of features over the years. We're in our 6th year now of Forms Viewer, believe it or not. We started the development of Forms Viewer in September of 2013. We launched a first webinar in December of 2013. We launched the first alpha, and I think it was the first quarter of 2014, right after Microsoft announced the deprecating InfoPath. And we've been adding features ever since, including the feature you saw today with the printing footers, something that you can't do with Power Apps today. You have to use a lot of code and PDF generation. And what's interesting is you can do PDF generation in Power Apps. It's gotten better with regards to that, but you can't do footers like we just showed. And of course, the number 3 value prop is you get us support. We're very responsive. And thank you, Pete, for the first question here. Is this available in the on-prem FV? So Forms Viewer on-prem, if you have it, you can get upgraded to it. We do obviously free upgrades for all of our Forms Viewer on-prem customers whenever you want them. So we will need to upgrade your instance. It's a pretty short, 5-10 minute operation. So just let us know when you want to do that. It can be available as early as next week. Brock, thanks for having the second question here. Is there a way to automatically email a PDF out after it's produced without using SharePoint? Yeah, totally. I mean, you could. So I think. So obviously, Flow is part of SharePoint today. So the first thing that comes to mind, if you're using online version of SharePoint, is you could use a Flow to generate an email. The second thing would be a Logic app that's triggered on that library. So Logic apps are going to be usage-based because they have to compete with Amazon. They'll never be user-based or process-based like Flow is now becoming on October 1st. But you're on-prem, Brock, so in your case, the question is how do you email it without using SharePoint? And it's pretty easy to set up an SMTP server that handles your email there, and we can show you how to do that. But yeah, I mean, you can actually email the forms out. If you have DBXL, it's really easy. DBXL is one of the accelerators we built 10 years ago that helps you map data into a database. DBXL has an email option in it. So, and it also has PDF option. It doesn't have the footer option that you saw today, but the DBXL will print PDF and email that to people. So that might be a really good option for you, but you can also set up to have your SMTP. I'm trying to think here, how would you do it from the form? Mel, maybe you've got an idea. I think DBXL would be the easiest way. Can you think of another way, Mel, to do it from?
Yeah, I think DBXL. I think Brock has DBXL.
Okay, so Brock, I would suggest that. I don't know if we're going to add this feature to the DBXL PDF, but what you could do is you could generate the PDF, and have a link to it stored in your form, and then the DBXL PDF gen could, I think it could use the link, it could add the attachment when it sends the email, so you could have the PDF in the email envelope, which would be, that's actually what you want anyway. So DBXL can generate the PDF and add it as an attachment, but you can also add the attachment to your form and then have the DBXL email generation use that attachment. That's a great question, very deep. Thanks for asking that. Thanks, Shane, for the shout out. Good stuff. Thanks for all the work everyone does out there. Yeah, we look forward to engaging. I know you've got a question out to our support staff regarding overlays, and hopefully we'll get you sorted with that soon. And then thanks again, Pete and Brock, for your comments at the end there. We look forward to serving you in the future and every day. I want to once again thank Mel for her awesome job today. If it weren't for her, this webinar would not have happened. And I just want to also thank you again. We are doing another webinar next week. We're going to be talking about this new announcement by Microsoft about the flow pricing, and we're going to show you a logic app next week that allows you to reduce the cost, potentially the impact to you if you're using online flows. If you're not using online flows, maybe it's not so interesting, but Svetlana is going to be doing a SharePoint series in the next 2 months. We're going to take the top 7 topics for SharePoint administration and how to keep your SharePoint garden looking good, which involves a lot of weeding and pruning at this time of year. She's going to show you how to archive forms, how to archive data and to delete data automatically and set up policies to keep things looking clean. And then we're going to do a whole bunch of other webinars on compliance, on data loss prevention, and things like that over the next 2 or 3 months. So I'm really happy that we're preparing that for you. So you will see another webinar next week that's kind of related, not unrelated, but we will come back to forms. We've got the training in 2 weeks. Don't forget, if you want to register, go to our website. And I want to thank you all again for being here. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.